Thank you for joining us tonight at the State of ADUs in San Luis Obispo County Summit. So we're pleased to have you all here with us, and thank you for joining. And I'd like to thank our planning team, in addition to our team at Smart Share Housing, the team at ERI, and at HBA for planning this event. Our planning team, Joanna Balsamo Lillian, Terry Main, James Sofrenko, Jimmy Paulding, Lindy Hatcher, Celeste Goyer, and I are all on tonight. And so thank you, team, for all the work put into planning this. Thank you all here tonight for keeping your microphone muted until the Q&A at the end. That'll help us be able to hear our speaker as well. We will end presentations by 7 o'clock as promised, and we'll continue Q&A and discussion as late as 7:30, as long as there's interest. We have a robust group here tonight representing all 7 cities and the county and several different viewpoints. So we're hoping for a robust discussion and to learn from all of you and share information after the presentations. If you have questions and you'd like to throw them out there to the group before the Q&A session, or maybe you have to leave, please feel free to use the chat bar on the side. Terry will be monitoring that. So if you want to get things into that, you're welcome to. And if you can't stay for the Q&A, feel free to leave an email contact and we'll try to get back to you after the event. Yes, we are recording the meeting and we'll have that available along with some other information after the summit tonight. Additionally, we are combining some live presentations and also some pre-recorded presentations tonight. So you'll see a combination of these things as we go along. We have put out a white paper from the SLO ADU task force. And so Terry should be putting a link to that in the chat bar. Everyone should have received it with their RSVP for the event. But so if you haven't looked through that or you're interested in more detail on some of these issues, please feel free to look through that white paper for follow-up information and a higher level of detail on some of the things we'll be going through very quickly here tonight. So our schedule for the meeting is here. And so after my brief housekeeping, I'll share an introductory pre-recorded state of ADUs here in SLO County. And then we'll continue on with the opportunities with a talk from Terry Main from the Main Company and Celeste Goyer here from Smart Share and local realtor and planner Eric Berg Johansson. And then we'll talk some about the challenges. And Lindy Hatcher of the HBA will start us off with some general observations on challenges facing construction of ADU. And Jimmy Paulding, Arroyo Grande City Council member, and I will then follow up with some more detailed listing of challenges. And then we'll show some hope, some best practices from around the state, how to overcome some of those challenges. Celeste has put together some overviews and a talk from Gary Geiler, a planner from the city of San Diego. After that, Jimmy Paulding will wrap us up with some suggestions for next steps. And then Lindy will lead a question and answer session after that. Like we said, that will go as late as 7:30 if people are interested. Otherwise, with that, in general, we'll solicit your feedback on this as planners here on how we can help you do your job and help you rather than add to your burden. So that's one of our goals, our team at Smart Share and the ADU task force, on how we can make your jobs easier and lessen your burden. With that, we'll go to a pre-recorded session on where we're at now and how we got here tonight. Thank you. How did we get here? An overview of the ADU task force and the process may be helpful to discuss just a little bit. Listed here are the founding members of the ADU task force. And it was formed in 2021, earlier this year. by Jimmy Paulding and myself as we discussed in opportunity and sort of obstacles for ADUs here. So the task force is comprised of a volunteer group of planners, builders, engineers, and others interested in affordable housing. The aim has been to help meet and exceed San Luis Obispo County's goals for creating approximately 400 ADUs per year. The task force is open to all, so if you or others you may know of are interested in joining us and getting on our mailing list, feel free to contact me. The approach has been one kind of aiming to increase collaboration and a regional focus rather than jurisdiction by jurisdiction, implementing practical local and state level policies, and promoting consistent supportive policies and smooth processing. Along with that, financing options, seeking them out as they've proven an obstacle, which we'll talk about more later, and seeking accountability from regional governments to meet their established housing and affordability targets. The work product of the task force to date has been a white paper on ADUs, and so if anyone's interested and hasn't seen this already, the link is here, cceri.org. And you can pull up that white paper for more information on all of the topics we're talking tonight about there. Maybe helpful to go into a little bit of an overview on SmartShare and SmartShare's program, ADU SLO, and their role in facilitating the task force and this summit tonight. SmartShare Housing Solutions is a San Luis Obispo County nonprofit housing agency that was formed in 2017. And SmartShare's mission has been creating housing solutions by connecting people and homes. The initial program of SmartShare was HomeShare SLO, a program that helps match people to extra rooms in SLO County. And over almost 5 years, that program has matched over 100 people in rooms, creating housing by available stock of rooms, particularly in the homes of single senior women who may have extra rooms available and some need for extra income or support around the house. The second program of SmartShare Housing is ADU SLO, and this program is focusing on small houses and opportunities there. The program has looked at tiny houses on wheels and all kinds of other programs, but is now focusing on the opportunities for ADUs with the increased state law incentives and opportunities for production. So it's through ADU SLO program that we have been facilitating this task force. So that's been part of my role then. Directing ADU SLO has also been facilitating the task force, but do want to point out that the SLO task force isn't an operation of SmartShare Housing Solutions, just something we've been involved in facilitating. And so it may be helpful then up front too to understand the program has already been undertaken. Really, it's been an effort to help fill the gap between understaffed planning departments and homeowners who could benefit from ADU construction. So activities have included outreach, education, and regional coordination, including then facilitating the task force and other events and activities, and technical assistance, including free feasibility analysis and site visits for homeowners, help with design, permitting, and construction. Affordability advocacy, as we'll talk about, we want to target assistance to lower income homeowners to spread the benefits of ADUs and not limit those benefits or opportunities to just higher income segments of the population. Lending and finance is an important component that we've been working on, knowing that funds for projects is an important piece of it. Tenant screening and management assistance is something SmartShare brings from its HomeShare SLO program wheelhouse. And along with that, research and innovation. finding and sharing best practices and ways of doing things better, quicker, for less money that can create safe, affordable, and community enhancing housing. So the reason for the summit tonight is to create a shared vision of where we want to go and a commitment for collaborating to get there in general. We want to highlight the opportunities, and I'll start that with sharing the countywide production target table next. Along with that, we'll distinguish between the quantity of units created and the type and affordability of units, recognizing that they're not automatically the same. We also want to, again, target affordability efforts and not just efforts to create all kinds of ADUs everywhere that won't necessarily be the affordable housing we're after. And we want to align around these opportunities and commit to collaborative next steps to meet these goals, as we'll present later tonight. So with that, the countywide ADU production targets are summarized here as we look through the 8 jurisdictions housing elements for this current 8 or 9 year cycle, whatever you want to call it. We see generally a production target of 3,255 units. If we look more carefully than that, moving to the columns going toward the right, we see that some of those units are anticipated to be moderate income affordable. So roughly 1,200 units anticipated moderate income affordable. And those turn out to be 62% of our RHNA requirements for moderate income affordable units. So a fair number, but not all. If we move to the columns to the right, the low income affordable units, what we see in general is an estimate of 1,600 and some units over this time period. And we see that this number of units is 114% of our RHNA requirements. So we see really when it comes to low income affordability that we're really placing all of the carton of eggs in this one basket here with expectations for low income affordable housing. Now, of course, if we look upward in the slides, this percentage is variable between jurisdictions. We see a range from 26% estimated low income affordable in the city of SLO up to an estimate of 922% in Paso Robles. And so if we look more closely at those numbers, looking at them in a different way, we see of those targets of total production, we see an estimate that 50% of these units will be low income affordable units. And we see the 37% estimated to be moderate income affordable, with 13% of the units, particularly then in the coastal areas and city of SLO, being above moderate income affordable. This market rent is out of our control. Without rental restrictive covenants and such, it's the reality we face that in some of these areas, even small basic units will be beyond affordable. But we can look then at the sort of return on investment of penciling projects out and promoting affordability this way through incentives for less expensive, smaller ADU projects like garage conversions, which we'll talk about more in the upcoming presentation. Again, that focus on affordability, we need incentives and interventions so that the benefits of ADU rental income and the opportunities for affordable rentals both can be equitably shared. A study by PlaceWorks for the County of San Luis Obispo in 2019 affirmed this reality that jurisdictions who are actively educating homeowners and helping them with technical assistance get payoff with increased production. So that's something we want to focus on. On behalf of our summit planning team, Smart Share Housing Solutions team, and the SLO County ADU Task Force, thank you for joining us tonight. We hope the information provided proves valuable and we look forward to working with you to meet shared goals over the upcoming years. And so my contact information, I'm Ann Wyatt, and I can be reached at Ann with an E at smartsharehousing-solutions.org. And so if anyone wants any more information on the task force or to get on the list who isn't, or otherwise, please feel free to contact me. We want to share more opportunities from different angles. And so to carry on with that, we're going to look at how the opportunities from the angle of a builder here in San Luis Obispo County, and from a dreamer. Our executive director, Celeste, is going to share some ideas for garage conversions and how we can reimagine our streetscape. And Eric Berg Johansson, a local realtor and planner, is going to share some information about benefits to homeowners from ADUs. And so with that, Celeste and I sat down with Terry Main to discuss opportunities and challenges from the builder perspective. And welcome, Terry. We're going to share a pre-recording here. Terry Main this evening. Terry and her husband Charlie run the Main Company, a general contractor serving San Luis Obispo County. Terry, welcome.
Thank you, Ann and Celeste. It's nice to be here.
Will you share your experience working with homeowners on ADU projects over the last few years?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Charlie and I have been approached a number of times over the past year with homeowners interested in building ADUs. The first project I'd kind of like to share with you is a 400 square foot ADU in the North County. The homeowner had already designed and permitted this project. It was intended to be used for an elderly parent. Once we became involved, we bid the project out, and despite all of our best efforts, we were surprised to find it coming in at approximately $400 a square foot. That was beyond the homeowner's budget, and at this time, they have not chosen to go forward. We have another ADU that we're doing in Atascadero. This one is a project between two family members, two parents and their son. They are building a 500 square foot custom ADU with a large covered patio and a detached garage. And this one also is coming in at about $350 a square foot, not counting design and permitting fees. But this project is going to go forward. And I think that both the homeowner and the son are very pleased with the design, but once again, it's fairly custom. We're also working with a homeowner in Morro Bay who is converting a garage bonus room to an ADU. This one is currently in the CDP process, the Coastal Development Permit process, and we expect to get permission for that and move forward sometime in the fall. This one is going to be very affordable. Our budget's under $75,000, and we think we're going to hit that. And it's pretty obvious to us that when you're taking interior space and converting it, as opposed to building a detached unit, it's much more affordable, which is understandable since building a detached ADU basically involves in everything that you normally do in the construction of a home.
And so who's going to use these units that you're designing? Maybe some of these higher end detached units. Do you have any sense of that, why they're building them and who for?
It's all for family members.
Okay.
And possibly some short-term guest space, but none of these are intended to be rental units.
Okay. And so you participated in some site visits with me after SmartShare sent out a postcard mailing soliciting interest in ADU production aimed at lower income senior homeowners throughout the county. Will you share a little bit about what you observed going out on those 4 or 5 site feasibility visits with me?
Yes, I was very pleased to be going on those with you because I wasn't quite sure what we were going to find. And my basic takeaway was that there are a variety. It was wide, the type of homeowner, the type of project that they envisioned, what their intention were. It varied widely. There was no uniformity. In general, I believe, if I recall correctly, that most of these were interior space or garage conversions. So they were going to come in a relatively affordable range. But the homeowners had lots of questions. They weren't sure how to approach the project. They didn't know how feasible their ideas were. They were very concerned about cost. They weren't quite sure how to approach their jurisdiction and see what kind of permission they could get or what type level of permitting was required. So a lot of interest, but a lot of uncertainty on their part about how to proceed.
Okay, and so helping understand the cost comparison a little more in different types of ADUs. So in some of the examples that you're seeing in general referral calls, when you said you were seeing around $400 a square foot, so if we're looking at a relatively small 500 square foot ADU, that price point then may come in at around $200,000 to build.
Definitely. I think if it was a custom designed, potentially matching their home or having other features in the higher end range, it would be hard to do it for less than that.
Okay, and then you said the garage conversion that you saw and are looking at bids on and costs for, you may be able to come in at $75,000. So a significant difference of $125,000 there.
Oh, easily. When you have already 4 walls and a floor and a roof and your utilities, and you don't have to do site work, it makes a major difference.
Okay. And so given your experience then and your interest in creating community enhancing affordable housing here in the county, any final points that you'd like to share?
Oh, I think that to create affordable ADUs, I think, especially ones that might be used for rentals, I think it's going to take some type of outreach, a program that people can understand, that they're comfortable engaging with, people who are willing to help homeowners go out and determine the feasibility of what they're trying to do. I don't think that a lot of these homeowners would be inclined to hire design professionals or architects to help them with what they're doing, unless, especially now if they're trying to create a rental, if it was more maybe oriented toward a family purpose, multi-generational for elderly parent, they might be willing to do that. But for community workforce housing, I think we need a program. I think that you have to develop a program that's going to help homeowners figure out how to do this. I think there are people out there that want to do that, but I do think that there needs to be a program with people that are skilled in helping homeowners assess their opportunities and leading them through the process.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
We're so glad to have Terry here with us tonight. So Terry will be here during the question and discussion session. So if people have any more questions for her, she'll be happy to answer as best as she can. So following up on this notion that we have a lot of opportunity with existing 4 walls and foundations that are already in place, Celeste Goyer, our executive director here at SmartShare, has put together a presentation on reimagining garages and kind of thinking about how we can change our narrative.
Hi, Celeste with SmartShare Housing Solutions. In this segment, we're going to talk about how we might change the narrative for some of our existing housing resources in ways that enhance our communities while creating ADUs as affordable housing. Garages. Couldn't we imagine some more beautiful version of our streets from the standard garage scape that results when they're lined with front-facing 2- and 3-car garages? Couldn't we imagine a better use for some of our garages than as keepers of unsightly piles of mysterious stuff? The surveys range anywhere of 25 to 75% of respondents saying that they have so much stuff in their garage they can't fit a car. And our local surveys, a small sample informal survey, shows that about 1 in 7 SLO County garage parking spaces has a car in it. And I think we can all relate to the fact that about 30% of survey respondents said they don't even really know what's in there. But ADU garage conversions are a wonderful opportunity to really transform the look of a home in a neighborhood, as the upcoming slides show. Even modest homes with a basic budget conversion can enhance and beautify the look of a neighborhood. Garage conversions add variety and charm to a selection of homes on a street. And very often there's a large enough driveway to both retain parking and add a private outdoor space for an ADU tenant, with the addition of some potted plants and simple screening. It's probably good to keep in mind that ADUs come in all shapes and sizes and styles, but they could be usefully categorized into these two tracks. Custom ADUs on the left, mostly built with cash in hand, where the owners are comfortable hiring architects, designers, and paying for all the help they need to get through the process. Although these ADUs can sometimes add value as housing when the owners offer them for free or at reduced rates to family or friends or caregivers, surveys do show that they are less likely to become long-term affordable rentals. Whereas the slide on the right shows the homeowners whose goal for an ADU is more than likely a rental income or to build in flexibility for aging in place. And for these homeowners, more assistance will be needed for the many challenging and complex stages of the process, beginning with understanding what's possible for their lot and choosing contractors, design, looking at pre-approved plan options potentially, and all the way through to selecting a renter and coming up with an agreement with them. So while the resource required to assist this category of homeowner is significant, they are also much more likely to build an ADU that functions as a long-term affordable rental and helps us get closer to our goals as a region. So as we've heard others mention, interior conversions and garage conversions are most likely to make sense for cost-benefit calculations. And as a side note, detached garages have a number of benefits that make them a standout option, including the additional privacy of having no shared walls and the reduced environmental impact by using an existing framework and a developed footprint. So how do we get there? I think we'd all agree that having a welcoming, clear, consistent experience for homeowners would be desirable and something to strive for. And having interagency coordination between all involved agencies, both in the upfront informational array on websites and checklists and during the whole process, would be a challenge, but a very helpful thing to achieve. So if we imagine a future homeowner smoothly proceeding through the well-defined steps of the process, what does the research show that might look like? Well, it would likely begin with outreach to the community, inclusive outreach. It would feature an easy to navigate website that includes the items shown here, including a specific ADU lead contact, downloadable resources, qualifications and process chart right up front, and very importantly, success stories and videos showing people who have successfully built their ADU and for whom it's functioning well. The best practices jurisdictions out there who are getting good traction show that schedule drop-in meetings once or twice a week with the ADU planning department lead and other agencies represented can be hugely helpful to get homeowners going off the blocks and break through their resistance to facing that planning encounter on their own. And fast tracking for projects like garage conversions that are most likely to create affordable housing and be of value to the community goals is also something that our future process might include. Part of changing the narrative can be seeing challenges as ways to find solutions that do more than just fix an issue. In a best case scenario, a solution takes on positive power, moving beyond the original issue and starts bringing additional outside benefits that you couldn't have imagined before, such as the idea shown here of developing a program that would both produce prefab ADUs or panelized ADUs off-site in local facilities to use in our local projects, and that would provide training and high-quality local jobs in an industry experiencing problematic shortages. So thank you for dreaming along with me.
Thank you, Celeste. Appreciate some visuals of how things can look and be different. And Celeste will be with us for the panel and discussion after the presentations if you have some more questions for her. Next up, we have Eric Berg Johansson, a San Luis Obispo realtor and planner. And he's going to be describing some opportunities for home value appreciation with us tonight. Housing Solutions. And we are pleased to introduce Eric Berg Johansson today, a San Luis Obispo realtor, planner, and former engineering project manager. Eric, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming to help us understand the financial benefits from ADU construction to homeowners. So Eric, there are two types of benefit, financial benefit to be derived. One of those is the use benefit kind of from rental income to homeowners, which we'll talk about next. But first of all, we want to talk about the exchange value to homeowners, how they benefit upon a potential sale of the home they're in.
Yeah, I think that passive income is a really important piece of it too, but that resale value too is a huge part of it. And so in San Luis Obispo in the last year, we've seen a price per square foot of around $525 per square foot for a single family detached residence. And I've heard one method that some people out there have used for valuing an ADU is taking about half of that price per square foot. So let's say $250 a square foot, and applying that to the square footage of an ADU. And that's potentially somewhere in the ballpark of the value added. So for example, a 500 square foot ADU at $250 a square foot, you're looking at around $125,000 of added value. So there's no steadfast rule, and it's really case by case. But that's one method that I've come across.
Okay, and then tell us, you said you're also seeing less benefit maybe to higher end home values. So can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, I think when you get into the million to 1.2, $1.5 million range, you start to see less of a need of a buyer to have that income of an ADU. So I think the value is greater for a home in the 800 or less, kind of $1,000 range.
Okay, then to lower end or middle home buyers. And so then let's talk a little about use value, that benefits that homeowners can derive while they hold the property from the rental income over time. And so if we look at a very low end kind of best case garage conversion that may be done for $50,000 to create a small studio, just roughly we can see that we may have expenses with a full loan for that of around $500 a month. And with low income affordable rents at from $1,000 to $1,200 a month, noting moderate income affordable rents could be more than that, even up to $1,500 or $1,800 a month. We could have monthly cash flows positive from $500 a month and upwards. And so over time, that can translate to over $6,000 a year, even at low income affordable rents and upwards from there. And if we look at the 10-year potential income, that can yield from $60,000 upwards just in income over time. And so that certainly covers the moderate kind of expenditure up front. And so that's one of the two ways then that homeowners can benefit financially from this ADU construction. Thank you, Eric, for that. And Eric is with us tonight, so he'll be here to join in on the panel discussion if people have more questions for Eric Berg Johansson. And so where would opportunity be without challenges? Harping on the challenges doesn't move us forward in a void, but an overview here tonight seemed in order. And so we're going to go through a few presentations briefly to talk about challenges, starting with those from Lindy Hatcher, Executive Director of the Home Builders Association of the Central Coast, And then we'll go into a few more barriers listed by Jimmy Paulding, a Rio Grande City Council member, and I. And so with that, welcome, Lindy. Glad to have you here. You get to start us off with our challenges to ADU production.
All right, thank you, Anne. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share some building industry issues and challenges we face in building ADUs. Applications, permits, and development fees contribute to building costs, and these costs are passed on to the ADU owner and, of course, then the renter. So savings are also passed on. So jurisdictions can lower fees to increase ADU production as part of the solution. Another challenge is material costs. You've probably been hearing a lot about this in the news lately, and lumber prices and other material prices are going down. But the supply chain issues are not well understood by many homeowners and general public. Costs are still currently high because suppliers already paid premium prices for the products they have in stock, and they need to recoup those expenses by selling them based on their purchase price they paid. Once they reorder, the prices should drop accordingly. So since COVID, there is a lack of trucking employees causing delays getting materials delivered, which leads to my next point, labor issues. Pre-pandemic, our industry already had a labor shortage of trade workers. Now, this is a real thing. The Great Resignation, as described by Forbes magazine, workplaces are seeing a trend in employees quitting their jobs. 4 million workers quit just in the month of April. It's explored by University of Texas, and Microsoft reports that 41% of people worldwide are questioning their professions, not just their workplace. And people are looking at they work longer hours because there's not travel between meetings. They don't get out and take a lunch break during COVID, and you can put back-to-back Zooms crammed into your schedule. These are all part of the issues. Pew Research also reports an exodus of baby boomers retiring. 3.2 million more baby boomers retired in Q3 of 2020 than the same quarter of 2019. The HBA is looking toward future solutions. So we've been working with the California Building Industry Association, or CBIA's BIDA program, and that is prepared curriculum to get more trades taught in the high schools. And in SLO County, we're doing something innovative. We are working to get BIDA credits transferred from high school to Cuesta College to Cal Poly. And we hope to replicate that at Allen Hancock College in Santa Barbara County as well. So, okay, I mentioned the national industry and our industry staff shortages. So now let's discuss local jurisdiction staff turnover and shortages. Many cities have building and planning departments that are understaffed, and it takes time to get new employees up to speed. The county is also understaffed in its building and planning departments, and staff shortages lead to delays, which are costly. So I can probably line up an ADU Ordinance 101 from CBIA, the California Building Industry Association, or one of our partners if interested. And this might help staff better understand the new statewide mandate. And we're really trying to keep costs low. We need efficiencies and quick approvals to do that. So understanding takes time, and we all know time equals money equals increased ADU price equals increased ADU rental price. So this is a solvable issue. It's just going to take some rolling up the sleeves and a community to come together around the issue. So another challenge is it's painful and expensive to change designs after ADU installation. An example is one builder paid a $30,000 price tag to fix a single junior ADU that was built to approved plans that did not meet the new fire and noise codes. So building codes change annually, and this is also a problem. We need to streamline building and permitting and development processes and decrease long plan check response times. Some builders feel like they must be the squeaky wheel to get a response. We're looking for consistency in and even between jurisdictions on interpretations. Jurisdictional differences can be confusing, even unreasonable at times. Some require you to upgrade infrastructure on your property. One city asked an applicant to upgrade the neighbor's property for the applicant's ADU. So water constraints are huge. No water, no ADUs. And we should be working on capturing, reusing, treating, and finding new water sources. The coastal zones, we have issues in coastal zones, adding an additional layer to the approval process, and they are also understaffed. So delays increase, again, project time and expense. If we could start working toward a blanket approval, that might be a feasible solution. ADUs in the coastal zone have less parking and flexibility or leeway than inland zones. Typically, ADUs require additional parking. Junior ADUs do not. We support developing pre-approved plans, and some related challenges are identified in the ADU task force report, like soil variances. One HBA member suggested a solution to soil variances, identifying city and area standard soil types, and then pre-approving area stock footing designs as a solution. I will conclude with opportunities. It costs less to have ADU plans approved with single family home and subdivision plans instead of adding ADUs post-home construction. ADUs are an innovative form of building affordable by design units, and they can help build wealth for the owner, as we just heard. The HBA looks forward to helping streamlining permitting and development processes and bringing a boots on the ground perspective to aid in making more affordable and less challenging building of ADUs. We offer experiential-based feedback, ideas, and solutions on feasibility and cost savings. And thank you for hearing our thoughts. And with that, I am pleased to introduce Jimmy Paulding, Arroyo Grande City Council member, to elaborate on the ADU Task Force report challenges and solutions. Jimmy.
Thank you, Lindy. I certainly appreciate the HBA's partnership with our task force. And we will talk more about solutions after we go through some more challenges, but we'll get into some technical, the merits of some technical challenges now. And then again, I promise we'll talk solutions. So a list that we're going to run through is the lack of public understanding of opportunities for ADUs, some constraints related to design, planning, construction, and permitting, some of the constraints related to funding, financing, and lending, some technical challenges, as well as ongoing ADU management. Next slide. So I will not cover each of the solutions on the slide, but I want to refer you to the white paper that was linked in the chat earlier. It's got all of these solutions identified, and then I hope that you have questions and comments later when we go into Q&A about some of these. But again, when we're talking about lack of public awareness, from my city council member perspective, I talk with folks all the time that just as mentioned by a number of the speakers tonight, they don't understand the process and they need a resource. So we can do more. And again, we'll talk about solutions as to how to get the education and outreach working better in our community. Another area of concern is the lack of policymaker awareness about opportunities and constraints. And I'll speak candidly on this one. As a policymaker, I get to interface with a number of other local elected officials in our county. And we have our 8 jurisdictions, the county and then the 7 cities. And oftentimes I'll get a reaction about ADUs that, hey, we've checked that box, we've done that. But as the task force has identified, there's a lot more that we need to do if we really want to move forward and build ADUs as a means of generating affordable housing. Another issue is the lack of understanding around the benefits, the environmental benefits of ADUs. It's a great way to construct more infill housing. Next slide, please. This notion of, okay, jurisdictional compliance. I think Anne mentioned earlier in the presentation that there is state law that preempts local control essentially to impose burdensome requirements on the ADU construction permitting process. So there is an effort underway for most of our jurisdictions in the county to get our zoning ordinances and development codes into compliance with state law, although there's been some lag time, often due to our understaffed and under-resourced community development departments. The city of Arroyo Grande is an example, but I am proud to announce that we've made a lot of progress in that area. I think we have some staff here today, so I'd be interested in you sharing any of your questions, comments, concerns. But when we look at this notion of just meeting the bare minimum compliance as opposed to actually creating a process that's really helpful for the homeowner or for the builder or designer at the outset, that clearly lays out what those requirements are in a nice checklist, so someone can actually submit that compliant application, and we can meet the intent of state law, which is to turn those permits around within 60 days from a ministerial standpoint. So a lot of work we can do in that area, and we're here as a task force to be a partner, to work with our planners, work with staff, work with our policymakers to be that resource. And again, we'll talk about solutions here in a little bit beyond that. Another issue is the limited coordination between jurisdictions. So one of the awesome programs that we have going on at 2 jurisdictions is this to create an intent to create pre-approved floor plans. So there's one program being administered by the county, another program being administered by 4 cities, the city of Atascadero, Arroyo Grande, Morro Bay, and Grover Beach. And this task force has been able to kind of bring the lead staff planners together in that process to coordinate. But I think there are many other opportunities that we can create for alignment there to make sure that we're coordinating these programs and we're not creating any duplication of effort, notwithstanding the fact that obviously the county has a very different set of characteristics with the coastal zone and the inland zoning and other, more rural properties in general. Another challenge that we see, coastal zone challenges, and Lindy spoke to those earlier as it relates to the Coastal Commission and additional requirements that we have to go through. There's a lot of work there to continue to build partnerships and try to streamline ADUs in the coastal zone to the extent possible. Next slide. Another one is in our community service district areas. We have inadequacy in terms of capacity for water, sewer. In some areas, we have de facto building moratoriums. The question is there a way to actually work through those challenges as it relates to ADUs to make them legal and actually generate more affordable housing to work toward our goals? Next slide, please. Another challenge is for manufactured homes. I think someone mentioned in the chat the pre-certification process of HUD approved pre-manufactured homes. I think that's really important that we work as jurisdictions to essentially pre-qualify or pre-certify homes so people can get quicker turnarounds over the counter in terms of permitting. So we'll talk more about that, but it's definitely a challenge at the moment, and we could turn it into an opportunity. And then we have confusion around some of the terminology that we use. A lot of folks don't understand the term ADU. We need to always describe what that is. And I hope that we did at the beginning of this, accessory dwelling units. And then sometimes you hear those referred to as secondary units, or a JADU being a junior accessory dwelling unit. The goal there is how do we educate the public, make sure that the resources and the terminology we're using is easily understandable to the public. So we're bringing people on board. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ann Wyatt to go into some more of the technical challenges. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. And so carrying on with the challenges, certainly funding, finance, and lending is a real hurdle for a lot of people. It's probably intuitive to every one of us here that the cost of the ADUs is one of the challenges. Certainly every opportunity to keep the prices down and keep those costs down helps. Along with that, the lending challenges and the hurdles of getting loans for lower income homeowners that don't have cash in their pockets or access to funding to complete ADU projects. And so those components are pretty intuitive, but there's a little bit of deeper grain in there that the upfront costs of these things are substantial even to get to go. I think Lindsay mentioned a case where there was a $30,000 change, maybe before building even because of some code changes. That's probably the exception on the high side. But as I've gone out and talked to potential homeowner ADU builders over the last several months, what I'm finding is that they're looking at upfront costs in a range of $6,000 to $12,000 on average, just to get a building permit for the ADU and get to the point where they could get a bid on a unit. And so that upfront sort of risk cost is huge and particularly affects the lower income homeowner residents who don't have that $6,000, $8,000, $12,000 to gamble on whether they can even get a permit. And so that's a particular obstacle when we're looking at these kind of lower end ADUs as our most likely source of affordable housing. And we have this disconnect where our lower income homeowners who could really use that income can't even get to go. And so that sort of upfront amount is a particular challenge within the lending sort of one that we want to look to get over, whether that's through some grants or some free technical support through Cal Poly and other educational institutions or nonprofits or government grants. And so that's a particular focus there, that starting funding, in addition to the full construction funding for lower income homeowners. Next slide, please. Along with the funding challenges for homeowners, we have identified challenges for funding for regional efforts. This one, for example, of the task force to help educate residents and policymakers and planners and work together. We have a small bit of funding we've been using at SmartShare, but no long-term funding source identified. And so it's tricky then too to find the funding for these collaborative efforts beyond the 8 separate jurisdictions. And so that's something we're looking at SmartShare, and we'll follow up in next steps. Next slide, please. The fourth category that we've identified are technical challenges, and I won't go into most of these because they've been mentioned, but some of them haven't and are worth a quick note here. And soils, Lindy mentioned, is a real challenge. Another one that I'm seeing as I go talk to homeowners is boundary survey expense. We got a $2,500 bid just for a front line survey. So that's a hang up in terms of initial investment. Septic is a huge one. As most of the planners here know, in areas where residents are on septic on less than an acre, ADUs aren't often allowed now without hooking up to sewer. So that's a real hang up for people on less than an acre, and a difficulty for hooking up to septics, even if people are on more than an acre, if they have to build new septics or extend. Fire sprinklers and solar requirements are other challenges that are getting clarified, but still expenses up front and something of hurdles. Next slide, please. Utility connection fees can be challenging. That's a big kind of unknown expense in the upfront and unknown maybes, that particularly electric hookups, if people need new boxes at their main lines, can be challenging. As Jimmy mentioned and Lindy, changing codes can affect pre-approved plans and projects. And then RENA requirements and affordability. It's something that we haven't hashed out yet. As I talked about our housing element proposals and plans, those are expectations, but we haven't seen how affordability is going to pan out over time. Next slide, please. We'll look at ongoing management issues. One more category, a number of homeowners aren't used to dealing with tenants. So finding tenants, screening them, and managing them over time is a real hurdle for some segments of homeowners. And so that's something we'll have to look at, that homeowner training, if we want to expand our pool of ADUs and homeowners who are willing to create them and host tenants over time. And so we don't want to leave you with all challenges. And so there is hope. And so with that list of challenges, we want to present best practices. And along those lines, Celeste has surveyed some best practices statewide and put together a pre-recorded piece on these statewide best practices that we think will be very useful and helpful to people. And along with that, Gary Geiler from San Diego shares successful planning activities from there.
Hi. In this segment, we thought we'd share a little bit about what we've learned when researching ADU best practices from jurisdictions around the state. The UC Berkeley Center for Community Innovation has a great website called californiaadu.org. And on it, they have categories of best practices with examples that link to cities and counties that have made good progress with creating functional and easy to navigate elements for their customer-facing websites, including the websites themselves, their checklists, if they have pre-approved units, reports with information about financing, and bonus programs. So you might want to check that out. There's a lot of very useful info. And they also have a grading list that tracks how many ADUs permits have been submitted and how many of those have been completed 2018 to 2020 for jurisdictions, including cities and the counties across the state. So that's very interesting to track. And in that same table, they also grade jurisdictions based on how much they're following best practices. That includes some of these criteria you see here. A lot of these have to do with complying with the recent state requirements. And then we found very interesting the extra credit for the best practices. And that includes an amnesty program for getting existing unpermitted units into compliance with codes. And then whether you have a local finance program for ADU builders, and then having a dedicated counter person. So that's quite interesting to scan through there and see how various jurisdictions are managing this challenging issue. Here are some of the standouts. City of Clovis Cottage Homes website's really wonderful and complete and easy to navigate. City of San Diego has gone above and beyond with various incentives for bonus ADU programs that are quite amazing. City of Pasadena has a couple of loan programs to create affordable housing where the homeowner agrees on a term. So there's a lot of interesting information out there. And it helps, I think, to take a look at how the people are doing who have gone ahead of us on the timeline. For instance, the city of East Palo Alto in the Bay Area is a kind of an interesting case study that we've been tracking, because they started around 2016 with a task force composed of a lot of different organizations, including the city of East Palo Alto, faith-based groups, and nonprofits, to look at how they might encourage ADU production in a way that was inclusive and didn't displace residents. So they initially had this task force. Task force issued a report, and then after that, they got some funding. And the funding powered the best practices implementation, you might say. And so as they are ahead of us on this timeline, it's very interesting to see what they've learned, the list of items on their streamlining and best practices list, and also how they've working on overcoming some of the challenges involved in that, in the implementation. So there were three main key elements that they identified in the early days that they thought was important for jurisdictions to consider to move the needle on this ADU production: individualized outreach, streamlining of process, and gap funding. And part of the funding generated materials such as this, where they tracked the data by talking to all the stakeholders in the community that they could reach, including everyone, to hear what the challenges were, and what where the inflection points, the yellow numbers there indicate places that the study authors decided that there might be somewhere you could influence to move things along to the boxes on the right side, which would be satisfactory results. So the strategies are listed at the top, 1 to 10. Some of these have more to do with bringing existing unpermitted ADUs up to code and making sure that those tenants either get back into them or find equivalent housing. So eliminating those and just looking at the other strategies, which might be more relevant, we can see that the outreach campaign was considered very, very important, and that indeed they have made great strides with reaching everyone in the community with multilingual both videos, workshops, and handouts. And a case manager position at a nonprofit. Some of their funding they got from SB2 went toward funding a position to be a liaison to help tenants and homeowners. ADU accelerator, and that had specific goals for production. Regulatory reform, of course, to update the local ADU ordinance. Fee structure reform was a big one that they felt they could really make some changes on, based on as they got more ADUs under their belt that were completed, they could track exactly what the difference was in the cost to the system between those and full-size residents being built. So they were able to, without waiting for authorities above to make changes in the fee structure, to ministerially adjust them to on a percentage basis based on size and other resource use to make ADUs more affordable to get fees for the permits. They also initially on this strategy list was workforce development, because it, as they studied the ADU production environment as it was, determined that, as we have found here, that a shortage of construction workers and also general contractors to take on these ADU projects, which are smaller and less profitable, was affecting their ability to have the production ramp up. So, and interestingly, they also wanted to increase the number of people in the area who were trained to work for the planning department, because they were seeing a lot of turnover, which was affecting the training and consistent response if they continually had new people in these planning department to work with homeowners. So workforce development was a big one that they're working on. And then financial resources, as we have seen, those homeowners who are most likely to benefit from getting extra rental income are also the ones who might have issues getting financing to build it in the first place. So they worked with one of their local nonprofits, EPA Can Do, to create an ADU program that would essentially act as project management, working from site feasibility assessments on up to helping the homeowner select a tenant for the unit and make agreements. And this program has been at the heart of the initiative since then. And city streamlining itself fell generally under these categories, with some pinch points and some of their strategies that they used to overcome them. You can see the array here along the spokes of the wheel of the various agencies that are participating in the ADU approval process, including the fire district, the city itself, of course, the county, the school district, etc. So specific issues were things that impacted homeowners negatively, were things like surprise costs, inconsistency of assessment, what they call asymmetric info, which is where let's say someone at the fire district has information that the homeowner doesn't have, and yet they're at the same points in the process. So upfront clarity was key. And as I said, they're working on impact fee reform. That's ongoing. And yeah, just making sure that the homeowner has as much information as possible. Obviously, it's easy to bombard people, but and that's why it's important to have all the assistance they need so they can get answers and understand things. So what have they found through this funded research into the whole process that might be getting in the way of streamlining? And there really aren't any surprises here. Low staff capacity due to limited funding in jurisdictions, consistency of interpretation, and a very real risk aversion on the part of those inspectors who are in charge of the health and safety. Can cause the process to slow down beyond what anyone might prefer to see in the both the plan approval process and the inspection process. There is limited enforceability for jurisdictions to comply with the new state requirements. So that's being worked on. HCD is being given more powers there. So they found some takeaways to be that zoning reform is sort of just a beginning point, and that inside-outside partnerships, what they call, being absolutely key in providing some of the gap-filling labor needed to act as concierge, let's say, with homeowners, and to provide more outreach than a city might be able to do. And what they mean by inside-outside is inside the jurisdiction and then outside in the community, which would be nonprofits. So, and they call that keeping ADUs on the table as a ready-made solution. So that would consist of nonprofits who have ongoing programs to encourage ADUs or to educate the community or to build housing using ADU forms, that as the city moves along in the process itself, it can reach out and take advantage of some of the resources that nonprofits have been slowly developing. So thanks for sitting in with me and some of these best practices notes. You can watch the entire Casita Coalition video with Derek Ouyang and Rachel Horst, and a lot of great information there that go into quite a lot of detail. And then please do see the ADUcalifornia.org website for great links to a lot of best practices around the state.
My name is Gary Geiler. I'm the Assistant Director for the Development Services Department. I've been with the city for over 20 years, starting as a junior planner, working on accessory dwelling units, granny flats, working my way up through the planning department here, and kind of coordinating our efforts here at the City of San Diego. The most important things I want to highlight are obviously what we've done for best practices are the regulations, fees, process, but probably the most important is our outreach that we have done and I've personally been involved in that has really helped to move the needle on these. I went back and did the statistics on these. We were getting about 1 to 2 projects submitted in the 90s. There were discretionary requirements, design requirements. So I was keenly aware of, prior to the state adopting regulations in 2017, what needed to be done, and we've been working on that ever since. And we have a really good program with the planning department on addressing these changes. So I'm going to go through those briefly: the regulations, the fees, the process, and our outreach. As far as the development regulations for where they're allowed, we wanted to go above and beyond just within or attached. We want to expand it to detached or existing or proposed structures. What we saw a lot was somebody wanted to come in and just convert that dwelling or that garage. Well, now we're seeing people want to do the 3 options of a JADU and an ADU, but they don't want to do the JADU in the garage or within the house. And we said, well, let's allow them to do it in the new detached ADU as well. And we have seen great interest in this. We've seen dozens of submittals that have allowed this, and it's really opened it up. We went with a maximum 1,200 square foot for the ADUs, and that's for each ADU on a property. We made it clear that for those properties that are approaching at or over their existing FAR, that we will allow an ADU. With the setbacks, we did not go with the 4 foot. We allowed full encroachments up to the property line. As long as there's no openings or doors, we're just complying with building code in that regards. We have a lot of properties that are narrow, or there's existing development on properties that those 4 foot setbacks just wouldn't work. So we went with the 0 foot encroachment, And that's not only for the first story or the second story as well, or sometimes 3 stories, because we didn't limit the height to 16 feet as the state did for the multifamily properties. We went to the height limit of the zone, and most of these zones are 30 foot. So that allows for, the second story on a garage in most cases, and allows for more flexible design for flat roofs and pitch roofs, etc. What was really important was our fee structure, and other cities should really take a deep dive on how they assess fees for projects. Is it a flat fee? Is it a combination of fees? The city of San Diego, we have to collect fees on behalf of other departments or jurisdictions or agencies, so it's kind of confusing. City Council made it clear that we're going to waive the development impact fee, the facilities benefit assessment fees. These ranged, as I said, we have over 50 different community plan areas. They could have been 10,000 a unit up to $25,000 a unit. We made it clear these are no longer required for accessory dwelling unit construction. Some other fees were the general plan maintenance fee, a mapping fee. We have SANDAG, which is a regional government agency that covers all the local jurisdictions within the county. There was a regional transportation infrastructure fee that we waived as well. We got it down to be simple and understandable for the general public. What am I going to pay? You're going to pay the normal plan check and inspection fee. That's a fat fee. They know what it is. And if you require a fire plan check or a fire inspection fee, you know what that is. So we got the average down from 20 to 25,000 a unit to 2 to 5,000, which is huge. There are still issues with water and sewer, and I think that's a function of perhaps the state didn't make it clear in their regulations. Jared might speak to that a little later, but that's something that we have to work on is the water and sewer capacity fees and things like that. So work with your utility departments on that. So after the fees were waived, what else could we do? We looked at the process. These were oftentimes submitted projects, and at the city of San Diego, which we do over 50,000 approvals a year, we needed to make these a priority. We used to have a service that was called over the counter when we were open to the public. Now, under the current situation with COVID, we went to an online portal for submittal of projects, and this is what we call rapid review. So accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units qualify for a rapid review. So when they set it up digitally, it goes into a queue for each reviewing discipline to look at. So structure will look at it, planning or zoning will look at it, historic will look at it. They'll do that same day review and get comments back. What was more important was to dedicate staff. We need to have a team so that there's a consistent interpretation of the code. So this was part of my job, was to train staff early and often and repeatedly as codes changed over from 2017 to 2020. We were doing some minor cleanups in between that, and we're still doing cleanups. And there's always room for interpretation. So by having the same dedicated staff to the program makes the review process faster. And Jared might give some examples of this, but we wanted to see how staff could get to yes. Yes, we want to do this. How can we get you to approval? Not the simple, no, you can't do it here, it's not allowed. Work with the applicants, work with the design professional, with the homeowners on how you can do this, on how we can make it easy, either the process or the fees. Explain the rules, explain the fees, explain the process. We also went to what was a virtual counter appointment, and it's specific to ADU questions. Our website is pretty robust in terms of ADUs. We have a lot of resources that are available, but we have dedicated staff that will answer just ADU questions. So they can do a Microsoft booking, set an appointment up. We'll get the address ahead of time. Staff can do some research. They can send their plans in, and we can meet just like this now with an applicant and say, here's my zone. This is what I want to do. What can I do? And this has been very helpful with virtual counter appointments. So that's just high level. What we found important was to clean up those regulations, go above and beyond what the state required, attack the fees, create a simpler process, and do outreach as much as you can and as often as you can. And now it's a daily outreach process by having a dedicated staff team available to answer questions on ADUs.
So as you heard, that was a pre-recorded session. So Gary isn't with us tonight to answer questions, just to let people know in advance in case they were imagining asking questions of Gary. We could shoot those to him by email if some people have them in the chat box. Next, considering successes statewide, Jimmy Paulding is going to offer some suggestions for what may work here, utilizing the successes we've seen from the surveys. Jimmy.
Thank you, Anne. And if you want to just go to the next slide, thanks. So what I want to talk about is the fact that the solutions are there. You've seen them. Affordable housing is a regional problem. It needs a regional solution. And so that's what we need to talk about. I've got a couple of theories too. One is that all of us here actually agree that and care that affordable housing is a problem and we need solutions. And the other is that we all agree ADUs are part of that solution. So the question is, why haven't we been implementing the solution? And I'd like to discuss that. So we can commit to meeting our regional targets. As you learned tonight, based on the task force's analysis, we've seen that the 8 jurisdictions in the county are saying we're going to build at least 400 ADUs per year to meet our regional housing needs assessment or RHNA requirements, yet we're nowhere near that goal. So what we need is the political will to actually deliver on that goal. The way that I see, doing that is to elevate it in terms of priority at the policymaker level. And I know there are many policymakers here on the Zoom today. And so how can we, even if we've already made it a priority, how can we make it a greater priority? Next slide, please. The next question is, how can we actually make the process more inviting, more consistent, more navigable, more efficient for homeowners, for people in the industry, in a way that truly streamlines the process? And I think that really entails taking that priority at the policymaker level and making it a priority at the staff level. And if we have those relative priorities, then we actually can allocate the limited staff resources we do have, understanding the constraints of local government, to a dedicated solution to the problem. We can then create programs that are more clear, accessible, that are online. We talked about pre-submittal checklists. The solutions are there. You've seen them today. Next slide. We can also commit resources in a more specific way if possible. And again, I know the limitations personally of a small city like the city of Arroyo Grande. We've got we're running a very tight ship in the community development department. We've got awesome planners, but they have so many other things to be working on. But what if each of the jurisdictions was able to commit to a dedicated point of contact at minimum to be an interface or liaison for this task force, and beyond that, an actual dedicated person or other members of public works, fire, etc., that are specialized and trained on ADUs and will approach, again, the process with the intent to meet state law and turn these things around. Another thing that we discussed today at length is, at minimum, let's get all of our zoning ordinances in compliance with state law, and then go beyond that, as we've discussed. Next slide. Establish partnerships. I think everybody's here today for a reason, because again, we all agree affordable housing is a huge problem here on the Central Coast, and we all agree ADUs are a solution. So again, feel free to join the task force, and then let's brainstorm as to who are the other partners that aren't here right now today that we can bring in to be a part of this solution. Next slide. And then finally, a very specific request. We have this once in a lifetime opportunity, in my opinion, the American Rescue Plan Act funds that each of the 8 jurisdictions have received. And so the ask is, and this is mainly obviously directed towards our policymakers, can we allocate 1 to 2% of those funds to go toward developing the solution that we've talked about today? And that is, what SmartShare has done such a good job at articulating. It's a one-stop shop. It's building the nonprofit partner capacity that will be available to assist our understaffed jurisdictions, to make our processes better, and will be that opportunity and additional resource for the community to interface with, so we can actually be stronger. Next slide. And so beyond that, in terms of how those ARPA funds would be spent, SmartShare has actually prepared a proposal of how they would do this. Now, of course, there are limitations regarding the public bidding process that we need to be concerned about as policymakers, and we have not identified the best way to deliver, the contract per se. I think that a request for proposal or request for qualifications by either the county or the jurisdictions individually, or better yet, SLOCOG, SLO Council of Governments, which is already involved in housing to some extent, could be the contract delivery mechanism to use these ARPA funds to put toward this regional solution, so that wonderful folks like SmartShare could submit proposals to provide these services that we need. And again, the list there: education, outreach, regional coordination, technical assistance, design, permitting, and construction assistance, affordability advocacy, lending and finance, tenant screening and management assistance, research and innovation. Without that whole package, we are not going to meet our goal or our stated goal and requirement of building 400 ADUs a year regionally. So with that, next slide, I will conclude that we are so appreciative for all of you being here today. Each and every one of us has a role to play here. Make sure that people that aren't here that you know should be here, other organizations, reach out to them, extend an invitation. We want to work with the community, want to work with our undersourced jurisdictions, and we want to make sure that we actually move forward as a community.